Hello, everyone. Welcome to our info session. Can you all hear me okay?
I can, Tabitha.
Awesome, thanks. Well, I appreciate you being here. It looks like we have a couple of new interested people, so that's very exciting. Thank you, Skylar, for being here, and Rachel. Then it looks like most of you in here are fellows who are here to help answer questions. So thank you so much. So I will go ahead and get started. And just feel free to hop on the mic and interrupt me if you have questions. This is a very small group and informal. We're really just here to answer any questions that you might have, Skylar and Rachel, so ask the questions you have. So to introduce ourselves, we're the Utah Teacher Fellows. We're a Teacher Voice Network, part of Hope Street Group. Hope Street Group has been around for about 15 years with its workforce branch, and with the education side, I guess, for about 8 years now. And this is the second year that we're done. We've been in Utah. So we just are finishing up our first cohort in Utah, the lovely fellows that I have now, and then applications open for our next cohort next week. So the mission statement for this teacher part is that the Teacher Fellowship will provide teachers with an opportunity to better understand and make meaningful contributions to the design and implementation of education policy without leaving the classroom. It's really important to us and to other teachers that current classroom teachers are the ones helping to make the decisions statewide and really drive what's happening in legislation, at the State Office of Education, at your districts, so that it's the people who are really on the ground in classrooms with kids every day, and not people who have never been in the class or are several years removed from the classroom. And then what we are about. So we're very much teacher-led professional learning. I have some of my wonderful trainers here. Debbie Morgan is from Sevier School District, and Bridget Varner's from Alpine School District, and they were fellows, and then they became the trainers. And so they use the Hope Street curriculum, but they're the ones putting it on. There's Debbie saying hello. So Debbie or Bridget, I know I'm putting you on the spot. Did you guys want to speak for maybe 5 minutes just about what we cover at our convenings and webinars, maybe what training was most valuable to you? I'll also turn that over. Think about it, other fellows on here, about what training's been most valuable to you.
Awesome. I'll jump in. Bridget, you can jump in anytime with me.
I'll jump in after you.
You can just talk with me.
Okay.
Some of our trainings, I don't know, just starting at the beginning, this whole experience for Rachel and Skylar has just been incredible. Like, I think if you ask any one of the fellows that have hopped on tonight, that it is life-changing, it's career-changing, and it's just an incredible experience. So as a teacher fellow facilitator, Bridget and I have gone through the first year of the program, and then, like Tabitha said, we transitioned over into facilitating, which basically we were just the same thing. We just got like a little advance notice of what we are going to be facilitating, and then we just jumped in with the fellows and facilitated these last few sessions. But it's been super fun to be able to take leadership concepts and basically just teach, not even teach, we're just facilitating, we're just helping move the conversation along like any good teacher does in the classroom, just facilitating the conversation to dig deep into these leadership skills and help each other grow in those areas, and then take that back to their classroom, to their district, to the state level, in so many different ways. So some of my favorite conversations that we facilitated have been around things like bias, and equality. That's what we've been focusing really big on this last year. And that has been super fun to see with even on district levels, how different we all are and how we function. And then also just as fellows, bringing all of our differences together and seeing how that plays. And then it kind of creates its own microcosm that you can take back to the classroom. I don't know, Bridget, what would you say?
I'll say that I think one of my favorite things from the fellowship is being around a lot of other people that are passionate about what you're passionate about, but also really willing to get engaged. And so it's been really inspiring to not only be a part of things, colleagues or other people, other teachers that are in the fellowship, but as a facilitator to be able to hear what people are doing and to be able to share that, because as you hear an idea, then that sparks an idea of something that you might want to do, and that's always really exciting and fun to be a part of.
Thanks, Debbie and Bridget. Michelle or Kristen or Stephen, did you guys have anything you want to add to that about maybe like what was your favorite professional learning, or if you felt like you've increased your leadership skills in any of these areas over the course of the fellowship?
I think that one of the most important things for me has simply been the re-engagement of my own professional piece to this. I believe that by being together and having those same values and same focus allows us to validate our own practices as well as extend them. It's given me some opportunities and relationships that I would never have had the opportunity to have just all by myself. And so for me, in addition to creating more of a sense of professionalism, it's also increased my ability to be a better teacher because I'm focused on more impactful pieces of my teaching.
And I think for me, one of the biggest things is kind of like what Bridget said, where you are around people who are passionate about the same things you are, and having that opportunity to engage with other educators who are passionate about becoming better teachers and helping others to become better teachers, was that to me has been one of the biggest things. Also, the writing aspect of it and publishing articles, that sort of thing, has been a good push for me. So
awesome. Okay, I'll move us along. So we've talked about a lot of things without really explaining, and the fellows can probably testify to this as well, is that the first convening, even the first year, you're kind of like, what am I doing? There's a lot going on. Does this mean anything? But I would say about halfway through that first year, you really start to understand, and it just takes off. So there's professional learning. We have 3 in-person convenings per year, and then monthly webinars. Some of our big focuses is on storytelling, and Kristen touched on that, is that writing, that we really try to get all the fellows published 2 times a year, whether that's in local outlets like the Salt Lake Tribune. We have our own blog that we run, a Utah teacher blog, or we have lots of national partners and outlets, some big ones like Ed Week and then other education sites. So we try to get teachers published to share just their opinions and thoughts or best practices, things that are happening in their classrooms. Engaging others through social media. Maybe I'll have one of the fellows touch on this in a minute. We're really big on like Twitter, and some people in the fellowship had never even been on Twitter, and now they're on all the time. We run these weekly Twitter chats, the Utah Ed Chat. We reach out to our legislators, people on the state board through Twitter. We share things. It's really great. It makes a big impact. We do a lot with our peers. It's great that these 20 fellows are learning so much and doing so much, but if we only involve 20 teachers a year, that's not going to make a huge change in our state. So it's really important that the 20 teachers who are fellows go back and are sharing things with their school and engaging their peers. We do a big data collection each year for the state. Our first year we did it on teacher leadership and talked to about 2,000 teachers. This last year we did it on equity and talked to over 5,000 teachers. And then really being involved with ed policy, we do some great days on the Hill. We're on several state committees. We're doing a big presentation to the state and our legislators at the end of this month. So really, and we have a lot of guest speakers that come and teach us about ed policy. So these are areas that we focus on for our impact, is within our school and district, with other partners, education partners, like we do a lot with USET, like the Utah Coalition for Education Technology. We do things with like the national board, just any other various education organizations, and trying to strengthen each other. With educators within the state, like really focusing on that peer-to-peer with the State Department and the board of the state office, and then with media and the legislation. Okay, here's the time investments. 3 in-person convenings per year, and those are expense paid. So, we make sure we cover your hotel and all the meals while you're there, and reimbursed for travel. We do the big data collection in October, so that is a very busy time because we're doing focus groups and sharing the survey. So October is probably the busiest time. We expect each fellow to write 2 pieces a year, and we do our monthly webinars. The next one's a periodic optional leadership, but the state is always contacting us if I need teachers to be on this committee, or I need teachers to do this or present at this. And so as those come up, they're shared. In-person and virtual communication with policymakers, and then learning with and from your peers. So I didn't know if any of you fellows who are on here, and Rachel and Skylar, if you have questions, please stop us anytime. But any of the fellows who are on, here they are, and Stephen, Deborah left and Stephen joined. Sorry, Stephen, I don't have your picture up. But if you guys want to speak to the time investment, do you feel like it was realistic? We say it's about 10 hours a month, with October obviously being more than 10 hours a month, but some months are far less, like over the summer. So you guys want to speak to the time commitment? If it was worth 10 hours a month?
Yeah, I think I can. I mean, it's like anything, it goes in waves, right? And I'm a fairly busy person, like just in general, because I have my passions that I pursue. I would say that, most times it wasn't overwhelming, and when it was, it generally fell into place though pretty well. I would say 10 hours a month. If you're doing 10 hours a month, you're doing pretty well with the accommodation, with sort of meeting that. Part of it's when you decide to write, how much you decide to write about, and that sort of stuff. So a lot of it, I think, is a little bit more personal choice. The data collection piece is, I think that's probably the roughest month, is October. But I think it's also the most exciting month, because those conversations to me were really valuable. From that standpoint, like some of that time and sitting with other teachers and talking about some of the data collection stuff has really gave me ideas about, I haven't really thought about that and things like that. So I think I think the 10 hours a month, is a lot of it is where you're focusing, and that type of thing. And then, developing relationships was where I spent a lot of my time, was just developing and maintaining relationships with different policymakers or different people at the state board. So.
Thanks, Stephen. Did anyone else want to speak to that? Or Rachel or Skylar, did you have any specific questions about any of these time investments?
I think for me, you can really be as involved as you want to be. So it can take more than 10 hours a month if you choose to get involved, like in some of the optional leadership opportunities with the state or your district or whatever. So I think the 10 hours a month is a good estimate, but you can get more involved. There are a lot of optional things that come up, and those can be some really powerful opportunities. So, yeah.
And also, Skylar and Rachel may not know to unmute themselves in order to speak.
I would add that even going forward, I would probably commit myself to the 10 hours a month, just because it wasn't overwhelming. So if it's something I'm willing to continue doing to sort of keep the work I'm doing in progress, because even at the end of my 2 years, there's still a whole bunch of other work and priorities that I'm like, I would like to see these happen. So I think going forward, even continuing that 10 hours a month isn't too much to ask.
Okay, so Skylar, I see you have a question. You're applying to graduate school. So I am also in a master's program right now. I will be finishing this April. So I did both. I know there's fellows who have also been working on their like national boards at the same time. So I think it's manageable, but I like to do a lot of things all of the time. But it's up to you. Most of our activities, like our convenings, are usually a Friday, Saturday, and there's one in June, and then September-ish and March-ish. And those are, so you'd miss one Friday. And then our webinars are, like we said, are once a month, and we do those in the evening, like a 7:30 to 8:30 time. And then those are the only like firm commitments. We need you there at those. But everything else, like the fellows have said, it's kind of when it works for you. So write on your own time. If you want to do more with the state, less with the state, depends. I don't know if you have a specific focus for your masters. Some of it might line up. Like I know we had one of our state teachers of the year the first year who was doing their doctorate in teacher leadership. And so everything they did in the fellowship like counted also for their classwork stuff. So I don't know. I think it's doable, but yeah, it is a lot. Everything extra you take on top of teaching, I recognize is a sacrifice because teaching is a busy full-time job. Okay, so here's some of the timelines. So applications open next week on March 11th. Once you set up your account in our application system, like your demographic, your personal information, your name and contacts, then it stays open so you can go back in and work on it anytime. There's 3 essay questions, and in just a minute, Celia will screen share what that looks like. And the essay questions are up already now, so you can start thinking about them before you can get in and write them. The 7th applications close. After they close, they'll be reviewed, and those are teacher-led, so it'll be current fellows who are reviewing those applications, and they're blind, so it won't have your name on it. They'll review those applications and rate them, and then we'll do interviews with the finalists. When we get to that interview stage, that's when there's an email link that's sent out that just says, do you support this teacher being involved with this? They don't have to write a letter of recommendation or anything, but they need to show that, yes, they are committed to having you part of this. And then in May, we'll let people know, and our orientation convening is June 10th and 11th in Salt Lake. So Celia, is this where you wanted to hop on and walk them through the application process?
Yeah, thank you. I have one more slide just because if you don't mind keeping that up for a second. Thank you so much, Tabitha. And my name is Celia. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee, but I have had the pleasure of working with Tabitha for, 3.5 years now when she was a National Teacher Fellow, a program that is on pause while we devote more energy to the states. And it is such a joy to work with Utah teachers and see the great energy in your state. So if you're attending this live or if you are watching this archived, I want to strongly encourage you to throw your hat in the ring to be able to take on such a leadership opportunity in your state. It's the environment's really ripe for this right now, and you have a lot of support. And as the teacher fellows have just attested, the camaraderie and the learning about others and their practice is sort of second to none, is what we've heard from folks that have done other teacher leadership opportunities. We tend to think ours is the best. So that's my national perspective before I get into technical how-tos. Tabitha, you also illustrated some of the specifics about the application. I'll show that in just a second. But I wanted to, before I get to to show you, I wanted to inform you some of the best practices when you go in to apply, even though you do have an entire month. As Tabitha said, you can see what the questions are, and writing those open response, those narrative response questions, the answers to those will probably be what takes you the longest, or should, even though they're shorter, they're under 500 words. It's our recommendation that you take a look at those, you spend some time on those, you draw from your own experience, your real world examples. This is not, I want to reiterate, who has already the deepest network or the most leadership experience on their resume. We have found some of the best teacher leaders through Hope Street Group Fellows programs are actually head down, closed door, focused on their kids, and have just not had opportunities like this. So please don't be intimidated by the questions, but do draw from your experiences collaborating with others, and maybe applying your expertise and your enthusiasm about teaching to others, whether it's your peers or even folks in your community. Technically, before you can get to that spot with the application and take your time with that, do use an email address that you're going to check, especially if you have spring breaks coming up, you've got testing. If you tend to get so much to your school email that it's hard to filter out, or vice versa, you have a personal email address that's just, you don't check it that often, just be mindful of what you put into our system, because we will correspond with you with that email address that you provide. And you would hate to miss some crucial deadlines or some correspondence, especially when we get to the peer review stage and then we determine finalists that would have interviews. You would need to be able to schedule those in pretty short order. So we have had issues in the past with folks in their school email and firewalls and that kind of thing. But just note, it's not required that you use your school email address. There will be other opportunities for us to know where you hail from. So just use an address you're going to check over breaks. Do inform your administrator as you're at the beginning stage that you're applying, and they can hopefully root you on and maybe even give you insight on things that you've forgotten, as humble as you are, that you could apply to your answers on those narrative response questions. But more importantly, if you were to be a finalist, you don't want it to be the first they've heard of this opportunity if you are then asking them to take action and mark that expression of support. Again, in the springtime, it's really busy for all folks involved in schools, and it doesn't always mean that a principal doesn't support you if they just don't check the email. But alas, that is a requirement to move past that finalist stage. So maybe just mitigate any delay there and say, hey, I might call on you later. I want your moral support now, and I will need your official support later. Just wanted you to know, heads up, that I was applying for this opportunity. And hopefully they've heard of Hope Street Group. There's another fellow in your district that you can point to, and I'll show you some of the examples of pages you can show them. So they are as excited as you are about this opportunity and how you might make that school shine. So Tabitha, I'm happy to share my screen now if you want to stop share. All right. This is a website we've used for a couple of years, so I wanted to show you as if you'd already created a login. So I have sort of a dummy account going, just by way of demoing the site for you, but it won't be live until next Monday, right? So a week from today. If you are if you stay up late, then you could start your application at midnight Mountain Time on Monday, but otherwise take a look at the application sometime between Monday and then April 7th and see the different opportunities. I wanted to shout out that both Michelle and Kelly have testimonial videos from their day on the Hill recently. And so those will stay on this page, but also on this landing page, I will put this archive video so folks that come to this page or other teachers that you think would like to apply can have this archive video and the walkthrough as well. This URL up top is also in the slideshow, and I'm happy to ping that to you, but this will be your landing page for where you would create an account. And you can see the questions here and the requirements. And let's see, this is from today, but again, I'll replace it with the video. And then it shows some teacher fellow expectations, which Tabitha has walked through informally. But if you wanted to see a little bit more of the components of the fellowship experience and sort of the outcomes that you might expect to measure, this might be a helpful resource for, say, your administrator or somebody that you would want to cheer you on. Here it shows the ideal candidates. qualifications, and then the compensation. We do believe that teacher leadership, because this is extra work that you are devoting, should be compensated. So it's a modest stipend, but I think you'll get a lot more out of it than even you put in, as the other fellows have attested. So it's just a nice, beyond the travel and the convening and the getting to be together, there's a stipend for your work. So if I were an applicant, this is where I would check my eligibility. We have that because in years past, we've had simultaneous states applying, so it's still just a component of our application. But you would have here check eligibility, and it would go into which program can you pick. So view programs is what you'll do once you create a login. And this will show your one and only option, which is the Utah Fellowship. I'm clicking through to more. This is a pretty user-friendly site, but if you have problems, there is tech support. You can also email fellowship@hopestreetgroup.org, which Tabitha will be checking and supporting. And let's see, I checked eligibility. This is where I would have, which state do I work in, right? So I will remove these that we're not recruiting for. So it's plain and simple, but Utah is what you are saving to your profile. So it's going to pull up the right application. I skipped past that, but I wanted to point out that we do recruit both full-time classroom teachers and instructional coaches that support teachers and get to work with students, but are not on, say, an administrator's contract. They're on a teacher contract. So if you have a unique circumstance and you needed to run that by somebody, do email the fellowship@hopestreetgroup.org address. But in most cases, if you are working with students, working with teachers, and not, say, at a district office, you are also eligible for this program. So, of course, my blue button turned to apply instead of check eligibility because I know which application I can apply for. So this will show you sort of the portal here. You are assigned a random number. So as Tabitha said, when you go to be scored, you are a Utah dash number gobbledygook, just so we don't know who you are. And if you have fellows, current fellows that will be serving as reviewers, there is no bias there and no identifiers there. So that's just your random number assigned. You'll see this review and submit button. You can't even do anything yet because you haven't done any components of the fellowship application, but eventually that will turn, I think, blue, so you can click it. The tasks here that are required are the first two, the personal information. That shouldn't take you very long, and I'll show you what's there. The narrative responses that you already have access to. If you wanted to compose, say, in a Google Doc or a Word doc, and then copy and paste, you can work on those and come back to them, but I'm always a little paranoid about that myself. So if you want to save your responses instead of just submitting them on the form, you can do that. And then upload resume. If you have a resume handy, we didn't want this to be something that prevented wonderful teacher leaders in waiting to applying. But if you do have an updated professional resume, or if this is an opportunity to update your resume as a professional step, we encourage you to do that. It's not scored. I wanted to be clear about that, but it's nice to get to know you a little bit more if it came down to that. And once again, it's not scored. It's only the narrative responses that you will be scored by. So the personal information form, and it's going to show you on the sidebar where you are in the process. This is going to already pipe in the name and the email address you provided when you registered. I didn't show you that registration form since I already made this account, but then you would have to validate your email address and yada, yada. So it knows who I am. I'm a Super Utah teacher, first name, last name. I do have to put in dummy data to show you here. Let's see. Say I was in Salt Lake, Utah. This is pretty straightforward, but there are some fields that are like my phone number has to be in this format, this kind of thing. It's pretty good about correcting you if you've done something wrong. Alternate email address, I told you to use the email address you think you'll check most, but if we are just radio silence, nothing back from you, and we would like to know if you're still interested, we might source that second email address. So that's just for us if we can't get in touch with you. Tabitha mentioned social media and our obsession in a healthy, professional way with Twitter as a format for connecting with people across the state and in fact across the country. So if you already have a Twitter handle, it is not required. We will help you set up one. But if you already have Twitter and you want us to connect with you, or we can just have that for later, go ahead and offer that up. Same thing with LinkedIn. We are bringing teachers over to the professional social network that does serve sort of as an online resume and a way to connect with your network professionally. Some folks are not on Twitter for professional purposes, but are on LinkedIn. So it's another great way. We'll show you later in the fellowship to connect with your peers and maybe even policymakers and decision makers. So these aren't required here, but you'll see those fields. This would be your school name. We are asking just if it's a charter school, just so we can know it's not mapped to a district per se, but the schools are in here if they're, say, a charter school. So it might be redundant here that you mention your school and then put the charter school, but the other ones here are the districts, right? So here would be your title, grade subjects. You don't have to get overly descriptive here, but we're just trying to learn a little bit more about you and where you teach and what you teach. How many years have you worked in education? You can include as many as you've been in the classroom, or maybe you were a paraprofessional before that. Round up. We don't need exact months and years, but it's just, again, another way to learn more about you. Gender, ethnicity, just standard demographic information. Tabitha mentioned we do partner with National Board. So this does not skew your score in any way. We just love to be able to report to National Board at the state and national level how many NBCTs we have in our cohort. So this is a handy way to figure that out. And this is the part where you would have to be available for the orientation. I think Tabitha and the current fellows can attest that that first, even though it's overwhelming, that first immersion in the content and being with one another is just too important to miss. You feel like you're behind if you don't get that good start in the summer. So we do make that a requirement of the application. If you selected no for that reason, we would follow up with you and say, are you sure you're not available? Because you're going to need to be if you advance as a finalist. And then this piece here, I will change these dates, but 1920 school year, obviously we want folks to be part of the fellowship and feel like it's a network of peers. So if you were, say, promoted to a VP or a principal role, an AP or a principal role, it would sort of remove you from the peer dynamics of the fellowship. So, there's a certain tipping point if something happens mid-year, but we would sort of love to know your intention of remaining in that teaching role for the duration of the fellowship, at least the first year. And so administrator's name and email address, that will come in later when you request them through the site. That's a different function, but you would want to go ahead and put that here so we can match your admin to the admin email address we would expect to use. This is just for us because we have done this year over year, and it's so fascinating to learn, how folks are reaching out to you, or are we using social media in the right ways, or did you learn about it from your district? Send out a note. So please let us know how you heard of this. This isn't required, but we'd love to know, especially if it was a current fellow. And, there you go. Thank you for the recommendation, Stephen. So mark is complete. You could come back to that if you don't do it in one sitting. That's fine. Save and continue editing. But you'll see it shows all of your answers here. You could download that if you wanted to, but now you got the check mark because it's complete. Narrative response form, I won't belabor this because you can see the questions already. They're just repeated here. Now, the difference is you can see all three questions and the way they're worded on the homepage, but you do have to answer them in order on the website. So if you have an answer ready for two, but not for one, you're going to need to go ahead and fashion your answer to one first. So word count here is measured. You see it's showing me how many words I have left of the 500. And you could type it right in here. There's no rich text, so if you're like me and you overuse, some might say, Tabitha, italics and underlines and exclamation points and things, this is going to be a basic, straightforward written response. So just note that if you do compose it in a different, say, Word doc or Google Doc. So say I finish this, I'm going to hit next, and each page is its own question. There are just the three questions. And again, these will be scored. Know that you are talking to fellow teachers when you are writing. So while we think it's important not to have super jargony things that a teacher across the district or across the state might not understand, do know that you are speaking to fellow educators, and they're going to score you according to a rubric and based on sort of your dispositions that come through in these answers. So here are my answers, and it's going to show that I'm about to be done with the third question, and then and only then you'll see there's a half of a circle filled in. Then and only then, mark as complete. Is my application ready to submit? It won't let you submit until you have those two. The upload resume, if you did that, you'll see it's optional. It's just PDF format. So I think it'll show, yep, just PDF. That's what you would attach there. But the application is ready to go, and even if you don't do that. So 2 of 2 required tasks complete, review and submit. It's going to give you another chance to go through it. And here's everything as a summary. You're 100% complete. You can download, and that's pretty much it. Now, the second part of the application, if you get to the finalist stage, would have you log back in and request that administrator support, and also schedule an interview, a video interview with Tabitha as director. Those we'll use Zoom, the same as you've used tonight for this. So I don't think there's too many requirements as far as installing that, but we would make sure that was clear if you're invited to interview, and that would be in another few weeks. So we do want to take our time with this, and because we believe it's so important that there are teacher-led reviews, peer-led validated reviews, that does take some time, since folks are doing that in their extra 10 hours a month as fellows. So we promise to be in touch with you, and if you have questions, you can reach out to the fellowship address, but we hope that this isn't a huge barrier to entry and you're excited to apply. And then, of course, we'll reach out if there are questions we can answer in the middle of the process. We'll also send you reminders. So we'll try not to be obnoxious about it, but once we know you're interested, it's always nice to see that application come to the finish line and not just languish there. So let us know if we can help you and support you. And thank you for your interest tonight. I think that's all I had for the demo, Tabitha, unless there's a piece of this that you wanted me to cover that we didn't see yet.
Thank you, Celia. I think that was a very thorough explanation, but did Skylar or Rachel, did you guys have any specific questions about the application? Okay, I can share my screen again, but the last slide is really just our question slide. So I don't know if you had any questions specific for the current fellows, if you wanted to ask them about something, or questions about applying, or if any of the fellows wanted to hop on and share any last words of encouragement or things. It looks like I have a chat. Okay, Skylar says seems straightforward. Yeah, it is pretty straightforward. Okay, if there's no other questions or fellows, any of you current fellows that are on, did you have any last things you wanted to share that you thought was important for them to know before applying or why to apply?
I would just motivate any teacher to apply, as far as if it's something, if looking at, I think from my standpoint, one of the most important things I got was sort of a holistic vision of the education system in Utah, right, from the top down, rather than just looking at it from my classroom up. And then also for me I've always been somewhat of a rebel, and kind of reining that in, so I was married with other agendas and other groups as far as working together to achieve those goals. I think those are probably the most important for me, but I would encourage any teacher who's looking at policy, and for me, it was even just being frustrated with where it was at and being motivated enough to change to really apply. So.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, and then if there's nothing else, it's like Celia said, I am constantly checking emails. I'm very happy to help and answer any questions all of the time. If you're on social media, you can reach us on social media, or Rachel, I think you know Michelle. Skylar, did you know a fellow? Hopefully there's someone at your district or a fellow that you know too that you could also reach out to.
She could easily reach out to me. If she's close by, I can visit with her pretty easily.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, well, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, it was a small group, but we ended on time, 5 minutes early. So thank you for giving up a Monday evening to learn more about it and chat with us. Excited to see your applications come through.
Thank you all.
Thanks.